Today's Talk About It Tuesday question is, I work with an organization that prepares young ladies for adulthood. Is there specific financial advice for young ladies that you can offer that will prepare them better for adulthood? Great question. And let's really get into the why first. On average, women tend to outlive men. On average, women tend to earn less over a lifetime. On average, women tend to save and invest less than men. So I think it's really important when they're young to stress the financial fundamentals and to stress consistency, starting early and preparing for the long haul. So what does that look like? I think when you talk about the financial fundamentals, the first thing is understanding budgeting. And that means understanding income versus expenses and how those things align, and which also leads into banking, which is the difference between checking and savings and how to appropriately use checking and savings. Which also leads to investing, right? Savings and investing, and what an emergency fund is and what it looks like and how it evolves over time. I think that's very important. Understanding insurance, even life insurance, at a young age, because somebody has to bury you, even if you don't have heirs to leave money to, which, at a young age, they probably won't, even if they're unmarried. Somebody has to bury you, and you shouldn't leave that burden on, the people behind. So even understanding that getting the policy, the earlier you get it, the less expensive it's going to be, and you just need enough to cover your burial. That's important. Understanding responsible credit use and what the value of a high credit score is, starting them early on that is important. Understanding good debt versus bad debt. So how you can leverage debt to gain things, but how bad debt will destroy you and destroy your gains in your investments. I think that's important. I think making them realize that there will be life events over time that have to be financed, whether you're talking about furthering your education, whether you're talking about a major purchase like a car and the expenses that come along with that, getting your first apartment or home purchase and everything that goes along with that, whether, especially home buying, when you're talking about, a good credit score, having enough savings, having enough income to cover a mortgage, having a down payment, and every expense that comes along with it. I think other major life events, besides home ownership, getting married. Now, marriage is a whole nother thing that has to be discussed, because being in alignment with whoever your partner is extremely important. How do you guys see, how do the two of you see covering the household expenses? How do you see income? Is it something that's collective? Is it something that there's a pool and each of you have some? How do you deal with individual expenses versus household expenses? What is your vision for saving for major events like, again, home ownership, children? Are you both coming in clean with no debt? That's important, because the debts all of a sudden become each other's, right? Being in the know, right? Whether you're the money manager or they're the money manager, just being in the know of what expenses exist, how they need to be paid, when they need to be paid, what investments exist, what insurances exist. All those are important, because unfortunately I have quite a few clients who are older women who have lost their partner through death or through divorce, and they were totally lost. They had no idea where to start, where documents were, what investments existed, what the expenses were, and how they were going to cover the expenses of a house. Now, do they have to sell, and what does that mean? What's the tax implication? Like, there's so many things that they were not in the know about in the marriage. So making it maybe a checklist for them to understand what they need to be in the know about once they marry, which could also include a prenup, right? Because they come into this with a lot. they might want to have a prenup. So those type of things, really basic, fundamental. Also preparing for retirement. Why would you not prepare for your retirement early, right? So that means, again, understanding what investments make the most sense, being consistent, being able to be consistent, and understanding compounded growth, so that they realize by the time they get a certain age, they'll have a huge amount of money just from being consistent with small amounts over a long period of time in the right investments, right? And not chasing these big windfalls and chasing these things that will make you money in the short term, but in the long term you'll be net negative. So this understanding that they also have to continue their financial education as the world economy changes, the local economy changes, different investments become obsolete or not as profitable. Well, some new investments might appear that are pretty good, that they, and understand to be well diversified over the long term. I think those things are important. So it's really developing, a knowledge base and new skills and habits early that they can take into adulthood that will offset some of the things that we see that become issues for women later on. Again, not being prepared for retirement because they didn't save or invest as much throughout a lifetime, as their male counterparts. And again, sometimes staying in a relationship, of marriage longer than they should because they're financially dependent. Also, again, if they do lose that partner for one reason or another, not being totally lost and unable to sort through the finances because they just didn't have that basic knowledge base and were not in the know during the marriage. So I think, to put it in a nutshell, start the young ladies early with a good foundation of the financial fundamentals that really everybody should have, but make sure they get it now. Make sure they get into the habit of, saving and investing early, consistently, and really, I think that's pretty much it. If you have some other suggestions, some other ideas, some things that maybe we missed that are very unique to young ladies or to women in general, please share. But please like, share, subscribe, keep the questions coming, and I'll see you next Tuesday.